It didn't happen overnight, and it definitely wasn't an accident. What fans are witnessing now is the result of timing, strategy, and two women stepping fully into their power. Freen Sarocha and Becky are no longer just stars rising out of Thailand. They have become global forces, and the world is paying attention. When news of Freen's growing dominance in China began circulating, many underestimated it at first. A few brand appearances here, a surge in fan events there. But within months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Freen wasn't just entering the Chinese market, she was being embraced by it. Her name trended repeatedly across platforms. Fan accounts multiplied overnight. Her appearances drew crowds that rivaled long-established figures. And suddenly, the question shifted from why China to how did she do this so decisively? What made Freen's rise so powerful was how organic it felt. She didn't dilute her identity to fit expectations. She didn't over-explain herself. She showed up as she was, confident, composed, and deeply aware of the weight her presence carried. Chinese fans responded instantly. They saw not just a celebrity, but a woman who represented modern influence, global, grounded, and unapologetically herself. Every public appearance amplified the momentum. Her fashion choices were dissected. Her interviews were translated and shared widely. Fan edits flooded timelines. And through it all, Freen maintained a calm authority that made her presence feel inevitable rather than promotional. This wasn't a temporary fascination. It was a takeover built on trust and connection. While Freen's name echoed across China, something equally historic was unfolding elsewhere. Becky's Chanel deal didn't arrive quietly. It landed like a statement. For years, luxury fashion houses have spoken about diversity and global representation. But Becky's partnership with Chanel felt different. It wasn't symbolic. It was strategic. She wasn't positioned as an accessory to the brand. She was presented as a face of its future. And fans knew immediately this was history in the making. The announcement sent shockwaves through fashion and entertainment circles alike. Becky's image appeared alongside Chanel's iconic legacy, and suddenly the narrative shifted. A Thai actress stepping into one of the most exclusive fashion spaces in the world, not as a guest, but as a partner. It challenged outdated assumptions about who luxury is for and who gets to define it. Fans reacted with disbelief, pride, and overwhelming support. Social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons, milestone breakdowns, and emotional messages celebrating what this moment meant, not just for Becky, but for representation as a whole. Many called it a door-opening moment. Others called it overdue. And then came the leak. Whispers of a final reveal began circulating online, content not yet officially released, hints of a larger collaboration, visuals that suggested this was only the beginning. The leak fueled speculation, debates, and anticipation. Fans stayed up refreshing timelines, analyzing every detail, every frame, every subtle clue. It felt like standing on the edge of something much bigger than anyone had expected. What connected Freen's China domination and Becky's Chanel moment wasn't coincidence. It was alignment. Two women moving with intention. Two careers accelerating at the same time. Two narratives converging into a single message: this era belongs to them. Industry insiders began talking. Analysts pointed out how rare it was to see influence expand this quickly across different markets, entertainment, fashion, culture, without fragmentation. Freen and Becky weren't competing. They were complementing each other, each reinforcing the other's momentum. And fans felt it. They didn't see rivalry. They saw power. They didn't see hype. They saw legacy forming in real time. What makes this moment so compelling is that it doesn't rely on spectacle alone. Beneath the headlines and trending tags is something deeper: preparation. Years of work. Careful choices. The courage to say yes when the moment arrived, and the discipline to wait when it wasn't right. Freen's presence in China continues to expand, with fans already anticipating what her next move will be. Becky's Chanel partnership signals not an endpoint, but a beginning, one that could reshape how luxury brands engage with Southeast Asian stars moving forward. And the final leak. It serves as a reminder that this story is still unfolding. Because power moves don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves, step by step. And right now, Freen and Becky aren't just shocking fans. They're redefining what global success looks like. As the days passed, it became clear that this wasn't just a peak moment, it was a pivot point. Freen's presence in China began to take on a different weight. She wasn't merely appearing, she was anchoring herself. Each new engagement felt more deliberate than the last, signaling that this wasn't a trial run or a temporary spotlight. It was a long-term relationship being built, carefully and respectfully. Chinese media outlets started framing her differently. She was no longer introduced as a rising Thai star, but as an international figure with influence that crossed borders effortlessly. Interviews focused less on novelty and more on perspective, how she viewed her role in global entertainment, how she balanced identity with expansion, how she carried herself with calm authority in unfamiliar spaces. And what stood out most was her consistency. Freen didn't change her tone. She didn't exaggerate gestures or adapt her personality to appeal faster. She remained composed, thoughtful, and quietly confident. Fans noticed. They commented on how refreshing it was to see someone enter a massive market without overperforming for approval. Her steadiness became her signature, and that signature resonated deeply. Meanwhile, fan communities in China grew rapidly, not just in size, but in organization. Support projects appeared overnight. Digital billboards lit up city centers. Translation teams worked around the clock to share her interviews across platforms. This wasn't casual interest, it was loyalty forming in real time. What made it even more powerful was how Freen acknowledged it. Not with grand declarations, but with small, meaningful gestures. A carefully chosen word. A moment of eye contact. A quiet thank you delivered with sincerity. Those moments traveled faster than any headline ever could, reinforcing the trust between her and her audience. At the same time, Becky's Chanel moment continued to unfold in layers. What fans initially celebrated as a historic partnership soon revealed deeper implications. Industry voices began noting how Chanel wasn't just aligning with Becky's popularity, they were aligning with her narrative. Her elegance wasn't performative. Her presence wasn't curated to mimic European archetypes. She embodied a modern kind of luxury, self-assured, global, and grounded in identity. Fashion commentators pointed out how rare it was to see a Southeast Asian actress positioned not as a seasonal muse, but as a long-term symbol. Becky didn't just wear Chanel. She carried it naturally, confidently, without dilution. And then the visuals began circulating. Campaign fragments, behind-the-scenes glimpses, carefully framed shots that suggested a story larger than a single appearance. Fans analyzed every detail, the posture, the styling, the atmosphere. Each frame felt intentional, almost cinematic, as if Chanel itself was signaling a shift in how luxury narratives would be told going forward. The so-called final leak only intensified this feeling. It wasn't chaotic or damaging. Instead, it felt revealing, like a curtain lifting slightly too early. Fans sensed that what they were seeing wasn't the climax, but a prelude. That Becky's role within Chanel was designed to grow, to evolve, to lead. And when people began connecting the dots between Freen's rise in China and Becky's positioning in luxury fashion, a larger picture emerged. This wasn't coincidence. This was convergence. Two women navigating different industries, different markets, yet moving with the same clarity. Both were expanding globally without surrendering their core. Both were proving that influence doesn't require assimilation, it requires authenticity. Fans across continents began talking about this moment as an era. Not because of hype, but because of momentum. Everything felt aligned. Timing, visibility, readiness. What made this era distinct was how grounded it felt. There were no rushed announcements, no overexposure, just steady, confident progress. Each move reinforced the last. Freen's China presence strengthened Becky's global positioning. Becky's Chanel moment elevated the perception of Southeast Asian talent as a whole. Together, they shifted expectations, not just for themselves, but for what comes next. Industry insiders began asking new questions. Who else has been underestimated? Which markets are next? And why has it taken this long for global industries to recognize what fans have known all along? The answers weren't simple, but one thing was clear. Freen and Becky didn't break into the global scene by asking for space. They took it, quietly, confidently, and without apology. And as the story continues to unfold, one truth remains undeniable. This isn't the end of the shock. It's the beginning of a recalibration. Because when power moves are made with intention, they don't fade. They multiply. And right now, Freen and Becky are standing at the center of something much bigger than themselves, an era being shaped, redefined, and claimed in real time. As this era continued to unfold, something subtle yet undeniable began to crystallize. The excitement surrounding Freen and Becky was no longer driven purely by headlines or milestones. It was being sustained by belief. Fans didn't just celebrate achievements, they invested emotionally, as if witnessing something historic that would one day be looked back on as a turning point. For Freen, China was no longer just a market responding to her presence. It became a space of mutual recognition. Her appearances felt less like introductions and more like homecomings. Each visit carried familiarity. Each interaction felt rooted in trust. Chinese fans spoke of her not as a guest, but as someone who belonged, someone who understood the rhythm, respected the culture, and carried herself with humility despite her rising influence. There was a noticeable shift in how her name was used. It stopped being paired with qualifiers. She wasn't breaking into China anymore. She was there. Fully, authentically, permanently. Observers began noting how rare that was. So many global figures enter large markets loudly, only to disappear just as quickly. Freen did the opposite. She arrived quietly, stayed consistent, and allowed relationships to deepen over time. That patience paid off. Her influence became layered, not just fan-driven, but institutional. Brands trusted her. Media respected her. Audiences felt seen by her. Meanwhile, Becky's Chanel moment continued to resonate far beyond fashion circles. What began as celebration evolved into conversation. Analysts discussed how Chanel's decision reflected a broader shift in luxury values, away from exclusivity defined by geography and toward elegance defined by presence. Becky embodied that evolution perfectly. She didn't perform luxury. She redefined it by being herself within it. Her appearances carried a calm authority that felt effortless. She didn't need to announce significance, it followed her naturally. Every image, every appearance reinforced the idea that this partnership wasn't temporary. It was foundational. Fans began describing Becky's Chanel era as quietly revolutionary. Not because it was loud, but because it was undeniable. And then something unexpected happened. Instead of overshadowing each other, Freen and Becky's successes began amplifying one another. Media narratives started pairing their names not out of habit, but out of recognition. Two trajectories rising in parallel. Two forces moving differently, yet arriving at the same conclusion that Southeast Asian talent was no longer emerging. It had arrived. Fan communities noticed the pattern instantly. Support projects crossed borders. Chinese fans celebrated Becky's Chanel milestones. Fashion fans shared Freen's China moments. The lines between fandoms blurred into something collective. What once felt segmented now felt unified, global, and purposeful. People weren't just cheering. They were witnessing representation reshaping reality. And within that collective energy, the meaning of the final leak took on new depth. It no longer felt like a spoiler. It felt like a signal. A signal that what fans were seeing was only a fraction of what had already been set in motion. That behind the polished appearances and controlled reveals were long-term strategies still unfolding. That this era had been planned with patience, not impulse. Industry insiders quietly confirmed what fans already sensed. This wasn't a peak. It was a foundation. Freen's role in China was expected to expand beyond appearances into influence, collaboration, and long-term presence. Becky's Chanel partnership was being positioned not as a highlight, but as an anchor, one that would shape how luxury brands engage with Southeast Asia moving forward. And through it all, what remained most striking was how grounded both women stayed. There was no rush to capitalize on every opportunity. No desperation to dominate every headline. Just steady movement, clear vision, deep confidence. That confidence changed the tone of the conversation. People stopped asking whether this momentum would last. They started asking how far it would go. And perhaps that is the true shock of this moment. Not that Freen dominated China. Not that Becky made history with Chanel. But that they did it without losing themselves. Without fragmenting their identity. Without sacrificing depth for speed. Power moves, made this way, don't burn out. They endure. And as the world continues watching, refreshing feeds, analyzing clues, waiting for the next reveal, one truth has already settled in. This isn't a trend. It's a recalibration. And Freen and Becky are no longer responding to the global stage. They are shaping it.